Good morning. I'm Warren Hogue, IPI's Senior Advisor for External Relations, and I'm happy to welcome you to this briefing on Timor-Leste's story, securing its sovereignty over land and sea. Co-sponsoring this event is the Timor-Leste Maritime Boundary Office, which wishes to present the status of the country's quest to delimit its maritime boundary with its two large neighbors, Australia and Indonesia, in accordance with international law, including the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, to which all three countries are signatories. We have a distinguished panel of Timorese leaders to brief you, led by someone I am happy to call an old friend, José Ramos Horta. Becoming my friend, of course, is not all José has done with his life. He is also a Nobel Peace Prize winner, a former president, prime minister, foreign affairs minister, and defense minister of his own country, and a former UN special representative of the Secretary General for Guinea-Bissau. He was here in that last capacity in May of 2013, and I noted then to the audience that we had gotten to know each other, José and I, in 1981 in Brazil, when I was the New York Times correspondent based there in Rio de Janeiro, and José was in exile. I had always thought our friendship was based on our extended conversations back then about the culture and politics of Brazil. But he told me at breakfast here this week that it wasn't that at all. He said he wanted to get to know me because he saw that I was friendly with the actress Sonia Braga.
Good news.
Timor-Leste, a country of 1.1 million people, is sometimes called the first new nation of the 21st century because it gained its independence in 2002. Its first elected president was a man who had been a hero of the resistance struggle and the quest for independence, Xanana Gusmão, and he is also on our panel today. Continuing on in this same high-level vein, we have as another speaker the current Prime Minister of the country, Dr. Rui Maria de Araújo. I mentioned the doctor title because he is a physician and once provided medical assistance to guerrilla fighters in the jungle. Those fighters, by the way, were under the command of Xanana Gusmão, who was then the commander-in-chief of the National Liberation Forces.
And now exhibiting me on
I told somebody it was like having George Washington and Thomas Jefferson on the same stage. And finally, the panel is completed by Elizabeth Exposto, who has served both Prime Ministers Gusmão and Araújo as a senior advisor, and this past May became the Chief Executive Officer of the Maritime Boundary Office. I was about to turn the proceedings over to our moderator, José Ramos Horta, but he has to leave a little early, and so I will be turning it over instead to Ms. Exposto, who will do the moderation. I will return periodically, if needed, to help her keep the speakers to their allotted 5 to 7 minutes, and then I will return at 10:45 to conduct the question and answer session. So Elizabeth, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellencies. Good morning, and thank you all for coming. We'd like to start off proceedings by having some opening remarks by His Excellency the Prime Minister. Dr. Rui Araújo, if I could kindly ask you to come up to the podium to give your opening remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us to listen and offer your ideas, experience, and wisdom as we share Timor-Leste's story to secure sovereignty over our land and now our sea. Many of you know of our independence struggle, and importantly, many of you were with us during those long and difficult years. We, the Timorese, are strong and resilient people, and we fought against great odds and at great cost to secure our sovereignty. We built our nation from the ashes of war, and we are committed to our development guided by our government program and our strategic development plan. While transitioning to self-governance for the first time in over 500 years, we established a semi-presidential democracy. We set up systems of civil administration and started building the foundations of a state. Importantly, we are an open society with a free media, a robust civil society, and the rule of law. We also have one of the highest representations of women in our parliament. While we still have a long way to go in developing our nation, we are proud of our achievements in peace building and state building. However, our struggle for sovereignty is not over. The final frontier is Timor-Leste's maritime territory. Timor-Leste is yet to draw permanent maritime boundaries with its two great neighbors, Australia and Indonesia. Timor-Leste is pleased to announce that we have commenced talks with Indonesia on maritime boundaries, a historic first step towards achieving permanent maritime boundaries. As our two states share the objective of reaching final agreement on boundaries in accordance with international law, we expect to make good progress. We ask the same of Australia. The government of Timor-Leste has determined it a national priority to set our boundaries. This national priority is shared by us all. We will not achieve our full sovereignty until our rights over both land and sea are recognized. As a coastal nation, our surrounding seas and oceans are central to the Timorese culture and way of life and are a critical source of livelihood for our people. As a small nation, Timor-Leste is aware of its vulnerabilities. It is an unequal world. Small states have always been at risk of being swallowed by big interests and agendas. That is why Timor-Leste is such a strong supporter of the United Nations and international law. The multilateral system and international law guides fair behavior and can provide states with options for dispute resolution. After vast reserves of oil and gas were found in the 1950s and 60s in the Timor Sea, Indonesia and Australia began negotiations on sea boundaries. The then Portuguese colony of East Timor was not included. Australia was the first and only nation in the world to give recognition to the Indonesian military occupation of East Timor following the military invasion of 1975. The United Nations, on the other hand, did not recognize the occupation. This is but a small part of the history which led to an agreement between Australia and Indonesia on seabed rights prior to our independence. That agreement, known as the Timor Gap Treaty, gave Australia rights to explore and exploit the resources in a vast area of the Timor Sea, right up to the Timor Trough, a mere 40 nautical miles from Timor-Leste. The Timor Gap Treaty was no longer recognized after the Timorese voted overwhelmingly for independence. But the form of it became the basis for new treaty negotiations between Australia and the United Nations-led Transitional Administration, UNTAED, which administered our country from 1999 to 2000. The traces of this past remain in the current interim treaty regime between Australia and Timor-Leste. This regime sets up temporary resource sharing arrangements that are, however, without prejudice to the final delimitation of maritime boundaries between our countries. It is now time to permanently settle our maritime boundaries and give recognition and force to Timor-Leste rights under international law. It is our experience that international law serves well in protecting the rights and interests of small states. When Timor-Leste went to the International Court of Justice to challenge Australia's seizure of our confidential documents, we stood side by side as equals, and the ICJ decided in our favor. Timor-Leste has also brought a legal challenge to the current Timor Sea Treaty regime on the basis that Australia allegedly spied on Timor-Leste's negotiating team leading up to the 2006 agreement. Timor-Leste now looks to international law to determine our maritime boundaries with our large and powerful neighbors. All states which have joined the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, including our country, Australia and Indonesia, are bound by rules and principles. The Convention provides dispute resolution mechanisms to assist states with coming to agreement on maritime boundaries. However, in March 2002, just before Timor-Leste became an independent nation, Australia chose to withdraw from the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice and dispute resolution bodies under the Convention on the matter of boundaries delimitation. Timor-Leste, therefore, cannot ask an international court to decide where an equitable boundary would lie under international law if we are unable to reach bilateral agreement with Australia. We remain hopeful that the new Prime Minister of Australia will be prepared to join us at the negotiating table and close Australia's last remaining gap in its maritime boundary. We ask for nothing more than our maritime rights under the international law. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Prime Minister. Before I begin, I'd just like to make a special welcome to Professor Noam Chomsky and his wife Valerie. Some of you may not know that Professor Chomsky was awarded the Order of Timor yesterday in a beautiful, moving ceremony in recognition of his work and his contribution to the struggle for independence, Timor-Leste. So welcome, Professor Noam Chomsky. As was mentioned in the introduction this morning, I'll be moderating, and I'd just like to say a few words. As the Prime Minister said in his opening remarks, settling our maritime boundaries is a national priority. For us, it is a question of completing our sovereignty. It's a matter of principle for us. And the reason why we organised this session today is we wanted to share with you, our friends, many of whom have been with us throughout our 24-year-long struggle and also have been with us during our 13 years of state building. And we wanted to share our story about our new struggle that we are facing now as a new nation. And we are privileged here to have the opportunity to hear directly from our top leadership. And it's an honour for me as well to be sitting on this panel with the founding fathers of our nation, His Excellency Xanana Gusmão, His Excellency Dr. José Ramos-Horta, and an honour also to be here with the Prime Minister. I would like to start just to give the floor to both their Excellencies Dr. José Ramos-Horta and to Minister Xanana Gusmão. I'll give the floor first to Dr. José Ramos-Horta because I understand that you have to leave shortly, but if you could just say a few words on this matter before I pass the microphone to His Excellency Xanana Gusmão. Thank you.
Thank you again, Warren, for welcoming us here in this office. You heard Prime Minister Rui Araújo's introduction speech. You will hear a more authoritative person than me, Mombot, older brother Shanana Guzmão, who will better clarify to you our views on this issue. I would like just to say that we, as the government announced recently, we had in Timor-Leste a Indonesian delegation to begin maritime boundary preparation for beginning of maritime boundary negotiations with Timor-Leste. I was foreign minister at the time when we began talks with Indonesia for border demarcation. In very short period of time, we reached agreement on about 98%, and the actual physical work of border demarcation began. The two remaining percent, probably the two sides will close the gap very soon. That's why Indonesia also, and our side, ready to start negotiations on a maritime boundary. Of course, the more complicated has been and will be with Australia. We share the Timor Sea. Between Timor-Leste and Australia, we have 368 miles, I think, which means there is an overlap if each side claims 200 miles. Being the case, it established in international law, you draw a median line. Very simple as that. Simple if there had been no oil and gas in the area, and that one side had already been exploiting years before Timor-Leste acceded to independence. But what Timor-Leste claims is very simple, very basic, is nothing out of this world, and that is soonest we should agree on a maritime boundary and follow the international practice and draw a median line. Australia, as you know, is a friend of Timor-Leste. Australia contributed enormously, particularly in '99, to securing with United Nations an international consensus to address the conflict at that time in '99. And Australia paid a heavy political price in its relationship with Indonesia for taking the leadership at that time. And Australia has been very, very generous since then in assisting the government of Timor-Leste in with development assistance. And we have an ongoing great relationship, people to people, government to government. And there is a new prime minister in Australia. One that we dealt with in the last 2 years was ousted in, again, a bloodless situation. Unlike in some of our countries, coups are much more serious, with more serious implications. In Australia, they do it more peacefully. But that creates, in any case, a whole new political arrangement in Australia. And that because sometimes when you are in a deadlock or you are in a tense situation, and then there is a change of government, maybe a change for the better, in this case Australia, there might be a new thinking on the part of Australia that it would make absolute sense to really draw the median line, establish maritime boundary, and review existing arrangements that would really be more fair and just for the people of Timor-Leste. So I think, as we deal with the current international situation, incredible tensions and violence in the world. And one thing that always comes to my mind, is that if governments, leaders, deal with situations with a sense of sentiment, of compassion, of wisdom, many of these problems would not have occurred. And so I would hope that Australia, being a self-assured country that it is, that would sit down with our side and amicably agree, yes, this is what is fair, this is what will be mutually advantage for both sides, Timor-Leste and Australia. And in the long run, Australia as a developed country that also depends on active international partnerships, active international trade, to have a stable, prosperous Timor-Leste, a stable, prosperous region. So I believe that in Australia, common sense and wisdom will prevail, and the maritime boundary talks will be actually expeditious. We will. So I'm an eternal optimist, sometimes naive, or too often naive, but I think we will be able to reach an agreement, because I know Australia well. I travel all over Australia, cross the desert by bus, hitchhiking, way back in the early 70s, trying to flee the conscript army in Timor-Leste, and then was sent back to Timor after 3 months. Well, I actually went back for 3 months because I didn't want to be arrested in Australia, so I went back. So I know the country well and the people, extraordinary people. That's why I'm very optimistic that the power of compassion on the part of the Australian public and wisdom on our side as well will be able to reach an agreement. So that's my, how you say, not technical comments, more has a bit to do with my previous training for priesthood, and that's why I talk this way. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now give the floor for His Excellency Minister Shanana Guzman.
Thank you, everybody. Good morning, and I hope that you can understand our problems. I feel very happy because it is the first time that I come to this building, International Peace Institute. Sometimes when we talk about peace, we look at Africa, war, our side, and our have a good day. We think that this place is the best place to talk about peace when war happens in countries. But now we are talking about problems, and I would say this is the right place, because peace is not only the absence of war. Peace is also peace of mind. And we are going to talk about mindset. My colleague, Dr. José Ramos Horta, is very optimistic about Australia. I'm not. This is democracy. This is democracy. Different opinions. Because a former Prime Minister of UK, he said, no permanent allies, no permanent friends, but permanent interest. This is the problem. This is the mindset. This is the mindset of powerful nations when they deal with small countries like ours. Yes, we recognize, we don't deny the participation of the Australian soldiers after the 99 referendum. But it was not to save us, it was to help us to put an end to the violence committed by the militias, pro-Indonesian militias, not to save us. We did save Australia during the Second World War. We were a colony, Portuguese colony, and Portugal's policy was neutrality, and to avoid the invasion of Japan, they did bomb Darwin before coming to Timor Leste, but they did war in our country to save Australia. Our people died. Many of our people also helped the Australian guerrillas. That is why in 1999 we could say they paid their debt. I have to correct this perception because in Australia the political level always try to tell us, we helped you, we saved you. We say no. We say no because without our fight, without the role of the activists, the good defenders of our right, like Professor Omshonsky and others, including many of you here, Australia would not go in 1999 with their troops. Why? Because in 1989, the Foreign Minister of Australia and the Foreign Minister of Indonesia signed an agreement to explore our resources, drinking a champagne, forgetting that we were fighting there, a small guerrilla army against battalions, Indonesian battalions. That was why we cannot agree with the political statements, we saved you, we are helping you. No, sorry. While we are dying, and in Second World War it was about 70,000 Timorese dying to defend Australia. During 24 years, more than 200,000 people died. When we were suffering, they signed an agreement to share our resources. Yes, you take 50, I take 50, and I believe Gardens would say to alialatas, expedite the war, kill them, and we get the benefits. Now, in 1999, Ian Martin, Yes. Yeah, Martin. He was there leading the UN mission to prepare our referendum. After that, I have to say that we were fighting for our independence, but we never prepared ourselves to be independent in terms of human resources, in terms of capabilities. And Australia took advantage of our lack of knowledge. Some say naivety. I don't say that. I would prefer ignorance than naivety. They took advantage of our lack of knowledge, of our impreparation, because we inherit the treaty signed with Indonesia. To avoid, because it was already done there, we could not impede. And instead of coming every 6 months to the wall begging for money to help us building our country, it was an opportunity to get money. And we agreed. We agreed to continue to. After that, I believe that many of you have heard about seized documents, spy. Yes, sometimes we say we heard about the economic intelligence, financial intelligence, but we don't accept that using military intelligence to take advantage of economic negotiations. That was why we made the case. Well, it is all about, we are talking about maritime boundary because we are talking about the resources there. We believe that if there is no resource at all, in 2006, we were not, I don't say forced, but we were not inclined to sign an agreement of not talking about maritime boundary for 50 years and beyond if the exploration of our resources is still ongoing. Only after nothing there, yes, we can have the maritime boundary. I repeat, a former Prime Minister of the UK said, interests are permanent, allies, friends, it is. And we feel, year by year, we try to build our capacity to understand things, to understand the process, to correct. This is our, I would say, our virtue. 2-3 years, we look back and said, no, we did mistake here. No, we have to correct that. And we start to understand that we were being used by a big neighbor, by a neighbor that, I would repeat, was the only Western country to recognize de jure the annexation. The annexation, not a peaceful annexation, it was a bloody annexation. Just for the resources. It is immoral for us, we should say. That is why we are not coming here to ask for your understanding if, as I said, if there is nothing there, if it is only tuna, crabs, or something else, or crocodiles. But taking in consideration that there is something there, we will not allow, if it is ours, we will not allow that a big, rich, developed country can take it for us. We got independence with the help of many of you. But we didn't achieve yet our full sovereignty. The world can be very peaceful, can be very democratic, but without the economic progress, economic development, it is the same. It is only creating the risk to violence, to conflicts. We don't, in a very diplomatic and positive way, we would say, hope that Australia can come to sit together with us, but I don't believe. I'm skeptical in this, because I was skeptical during 24 years, and we said, if we need to die to get independence, we will die, and we did. Now, I don't say we need to die, but if we have to fight, we have to fight for our full sovereignty. The only way is the delimitation of the border, maritime border. I say that because, as Prime Minister already mentioned, the border between us and Australia is only 5% of the border of Australia. And Australia already signed it with all the neighbors, the maritime border. Only with us, 2 months before being independent, they withdrew only for the maritime border. It means something. It means something. At least means bad faith. At least means not sentiment of compassion. Means something very different than compassion. We are here. We are talking about this. I remember I went to Democratic Republic of Congo. They are richer than us. They are with problems. Richer and richer than us, with problems. I went to Central African Republic also, richer and richer than us. There are problems there. I talked to the factions, to the belligerent factions, and they said, the root causes is this. Is there diamond? Is there resources? I believe that all of you know more than me the problems in the world. If there are some conflicts or difference, the cause is because something more than the simple delimitation of a line or a border. That is why we are here. We are here, as the Prime Minister said in his speech, we hope that you can offer us also your ideas. Sometimes, maybe because it is emotional, we don't get a calm way of thinking. And we hope that your participation here, ladies and gentlemen, can help us to think together. Because for us, it is important. Sometimes we talk about sustainabilities. Sometimes we talk about how in the future we are not playing too much a role in the international community. We are not ambitious to be like something that can take decisions. But we are helping. We are helping another 19 countries, fragile in conflict or post-conflict. And in many of these countries, there are resources. And the resources are also the cause of internal conflicts or conflicts with others. We would not say that we will go to, no, we will avoid. We are against war now. We are against war. Whoever does war, whoever promotes war, we are against. But in this conflict of interest, yes, we will fight for our right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for those strong fighting words and for your very frank and honest view on this very important issue for us. I'll open the floor now to the audience. Oh, will you do that? But before, okay, all right.
No, keep speaking. I'm just going to conduct a question and answer.
Okay. I thought if I could make the first question to our panel.
Absolutely. I will
Just to
call
get
on
things-
Mrs. Foster for the first question.
Thank you so much. I know that I had a question for Dr. Jose Ramos-Horta, but hopefully he'll come back later. You mentioned, this is basically a question for both the Prime Minister and for Minister Xanana Guzmão. You talked about changing, it's a question of changing mindsets. And we know that in Australia recently, the opposition, the main opposition party, passed a resolution when they said that should they win the elections next year and come into power, they're willing to sit down and discuss maritime boundaries with Timor-Leste. And also we mentioned that there is a new Prime Minister now in Australia. And I know that you're very sceptical, Minister, but in your view, both Prime Minister and Minister, in your view, how can we encourage new thinking from the new Australian government? How can we change Australia's mindset and how can we make them realise that it is also in their interest to give Timor-Leste a fair deal in terms of maritime boundaries? Just in your view, your experience. Thank you.
Answer that question, then I'll go to the floor and get other questions.
I'll give a quick, just a quick answer to that. I think we need to educate people. We need to educate the community in Australia. We need to educate the politicians in Australia, because as His Excellency Mr. Xanana Guzmão has spoken about the pessimistic position, the skepticism or the professional skepticism, because of the leader of resistance in the past was always skeptic about things, and it is still now. We have to educate people. We have to let them know that it's not an issue of us, Timor-Leste, wanting to have something beyond what belongs to us. This is very important. On top of that, I think it is also important to be more transparent on information, to let people know, for example, the details about what His Excellency Mr. Xanana Guzman was mentioned, that Australia had already negotiated the borders with all countries. And it's one particular detail that probably is not well known by many is that with New Zealand, Australia negotiated on the basis of a midline maritime boundary. And it was done in 2006. So 4 years after refusing to do it with Timor-Leste, Australia did it with New Zealand on the basis of the international law principle. So this type of information needs to be shared widely in the community in Australia, and I think it's very important that people understand where is the right thing, because that will drive the politicians, that will have an influence on the politicians. Just to complete one of the points that His Excellency Mr. Xanana Guzman was saying about Australia's intervention. Of course, we understand the political complexities around Australia's decision to intervene in 1999, but just take the fact of the community movement at that time. Demonstrations in almost all capital states of Australia was also one of the important triggers for the politicians to make a decision to intervene in Timor-Leste. So I think in answering your question about how do we change the mindset, I think the best way to do it is to provide information, honest, sincere information about what is right, what is the right of the Timor-Leste people, speaking in the way that, in the same way that His Excellency Mr. Xanana Guzman was speaking to all of us here today about the facts, about the reality, so that people can understand and then make their own kind of influence on the politicians. And we understand that this is a long-term process. And as I mentioned to the AP journalist, which had an interview yesterday, when we started our resistance when Mr. Xanana Guzman and the others, because I was a kid at that time, started the resistance 24 years, or started the resistance in 1975, everybody was saying that you can keep dreaming because Indonesia will not get out from Timor-Leste. But on the basis of our belief in international law, in the principles of self-determination that every people has, we fought it for 24 years. Now we think that we are on the right side. And of course, we do not expect to do it for 24 years. But as I mentioned in my opening remarks, the Timorese people are very resilient, and linking that with what His Excellency Xanana Guzman was saying, if we have to fight, we will fight, and we will fight for 24 years for our rights. So that's more or less my answer to what.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I'm very eager to give people in the audience a chance. If you would raise your hands, panel, I'm going to call on for 3 questions at the same time, so please make notes as they ask, just in the interest of time. I saw a woman there. You'll be number 1, number 2 here, and number 3 here. If you would, do stand up if you would, with the microphone, and please introduce yourself.
Oh, hi. My name is Terry Ann
And you have to
Hurley.
hold the mic very close to your mouth.
My name is Terry Ann Hurley, and I haven't heard anything solid in terms of imports and exports, and I know that Singapore is also a small country, and what happened is that British citizens came in and they were interested in utilizing it as some sort of a tax shelter. Right now, Procter & Gamble is there. What types of industries are actually associated with East Timor? There's also a CRS report from 2012, the Congressional Research Service in the United States, that says that everything is stabilized. You have a nice oil and gas industry, but nothing else about any other, like, financial institutions or corporations, and I think that that might help to define your boundaries. Also, just one more thing, Portugal and Brazil, since Great Britain was sort of like the grandparent of Singapore, I guess you could say, what relationship do you have right now to Portugal and Brazil, since mainly the people there speak Portuguese as well as Timorese?
Excellent. The second person was this gentleman here.
Thank you. I'm Charlie Scheiner from the Lahamutuk, the Timor-Leste Institute for Development Monitoring and Analysis. Just first, one slight correction to something that Mr. Ramos-Horta said. I'm sorry he's not here. He said Australia has been very, very generous to Timor-Leste, but the amount of money that Australia has taken from oil fields that should be in Timor-Leste's territory is more than the total amount of aid that they've given over the last 15 years. My question has to do with the 2006 CMATS Treaty, which, when it was being negotiated, many in civil society in Timor-Leste, they formed Movimento contra a Ocupação Tasi Timor, the movement against the occupation of the Timor Sea. And they thought it was a bad deal for Timor-Leste. And one of the reasons that people said that is that it has a gag rule. It has a prohibition on either country from discussing maritime boundaries in any international forum. And for the next 6 years, Timor-Leste honored that gag rule. During the whole period that the Labour government was in power in Australia, Timor-Leste did not raise this issue anywhere internationally. But about 2 years ago, Timor-Leste government officials began to raise it, as we've heard many times this week, and presumably we'll hear again in the General Assembly this afternoon. And I'm wondering if Australia has objected to this, what apparent violation of the CMATS Treaty. Thank you.
And the third person over here. Thank you.
Tamrat Samuel, good morning. My question is very much related to what just was raised by Charlie. Your Excellency, Mr. Gusmao said that the provision in the 2006 treaty amounts to, at a minimum, bad faith. This was negotiated between the two countries. Could you elaborate how the provision to defer the discussion and negotiations on maritime boundary was agreed, and what led Timor-Leste to agree to that provision? And now that you have taken Australia to the arbitration process on this issue, what is the argument on Timor's side, and what is also the position of Australia on this specific issue? Thank you.
It seems to me those last two questions are related, so what I'd like to do is get an answer to them, and then back to the first question, and then we'll get three more afterwards. So, Prime Minister, maybe since you're the Prime Minister now, could you answer those last two questions about the deal, the provisions, the... Oh.
Good questions. I apologize for only leading English when I was in prison, 7 years. That is why I don't remain English. Yes, you are right, Charlie. As I said, we are 13 years old. We are still virgin. Oh, sorry. We are 13 years old. we just entered in teenager. I saw many countries with 40 years old, 60, 70 years old, and I have to be, I don't say proud, but I have to say, we are different. I have to say, with all the difficulties, with all the problems that we face, we are going in the right direction. And as I said, the big feature of the Timorese is, after a few years, we look back and we try to understand. The lady said, Portuguese-speaking countries, etc., etc. Yes, Portuguese-speaking countries, and the treaty was written in English, and you know, if you don't understand the many links there, how they write, it is very difficult to a young country to understand that you are being lied. They are taking advantage of you. I say that because in many contacts with other countries in Africa, when we just tell them our experience, they said, oh yes, it happens to us. Look, it happens to us. Yes, Australia said they're very generous. Because we try to understand better how we manage the state. We saw that many companies were not paying taxes. Multinational companies. And we told them, please pay taxes. They put the cases in our court, knowing that our court is also very, very weak. But in the same time, they put the case in the arbitration in Singapore. When we were in the arbitration, an Australian minister wrote a letter to ConocoPhillips, one of the oil companies, saying that they have the exclusive jurisdiction on pipeline. Now the problem is exclusive jurisdiction. It was a big fight. It was a big lesson for us as a very young country. Now, Australia, and we have to say, by the agreement, if there is a difference, the two countries, the two governments must talk to each other. They immediately send a letter to ConocoPhillips during the arbitration, saying that, just tell the panel that we have the exclusive jurisdiction. Now, back to Charlie's comment. Yes, Charles. They say they have exclusive jurisdiction. But we could not understand this before. Now we understand. We say, if you have exclusive jurisdiction on the pipeline from the platform, how can we pay the decommission cost? And there are 700 millions. All of this, of course, nobody can demand to us in 2000, 2001, 2002, and 2006 to be aware or to know how to interpret all the agreements. If I can say, okay, we did mistakes, but now we are looking at this and said, yes, but now we try to understand the agreement and say, oh, you are doing all, you are also doing this. They said that the provision doesn't allow us to raise the question in international fora or in international institutions. Just to avoid this, they withdrew from ICG, from Anglos, only on maritime. I have to say, yeah, we raised the question, we put the question but before I told Julie Gillard was Prime Minister. We asked her to sit. We can sit to talk. We didn't want to raise the issue like, no, but they didn't want. Because they didn't want, we opted for the right way for us. After that, they seized the documents, they gave back. During 18 months, we were playing games like the kids, meeting each other. Okay, oh, see you tomorrow. Yeah, okay. That is why it makes me more skeptical if I say that when we deal with Australian government, whatever the government, because I believe that it is internationally interest, whichever the government.
Forgive me for interrupting, but there are other questions, and I just want to get to other people. So, if I could ask you to wrap it up. Well, Dr. Araujo or Mr. Esposto, there's one question which has not been answered, which was the question about the other industries. Could either one of you please answer that?
Yes.
I'm sorry? Well, Brazil and Portugal, we got a little bit of an answer to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We are still preparing all the conditions for attracting private investment to come more on Timor. Some minor investments are coming in now, but during this sixth constitutional government, which goes up until the end of 2017, we will be doing three main reforms: public administration reform to support all the service delivery, and then we have fiscal reform, and then an economic reform. All the legislation needed, all the preconditions to strengthen the attraction of foreign investment will be strengthened during this period, and we hope that with that we'll be attracting more investors to start more industries in the country. On the relationship with Australia, with Brazil and Portugal, we are a member of the CPLP community, the community of Portuguese-speaking countries. And this year we are the chairperson of that community, and during this period we want to refocus a little bit the work of CPLP and try to bring in more economic issues to the dealings with within the CPLP country members. So the relationship is strong. It's not only the language. Since our independence, Portuguese-speaking countries like Portugal, Brazil, Cape Verde, Angola, Mozambique have supported Timor-Leste also in the area of human resources development.
Very good.
I think.
Okay. We have 10 minutes left, and I'll take some more questions. Here in the front row is one, there number two, and three, my friend Ian Martin. So if you would please stand, wait for the microphone, introduce yourselves. And I guess I would say keep the questions short because we're running
Yeah.
low on time.
My name is João Crisóstomo. I'm the founder president of LAMITA. LAMITA, for the ones who do not know, stands for Luso-American Movement for East Timor Autodetermination. And I did try to help, give my 2 cents help during the fight from 1996 to the independence. At this time, I realized that what was very important was the world opinion, especially the United States and so on. I was just wondering, how feasible will that be at this moment to try to convince the media? I don't speak just about the CPLP, the Portuguese speaking countries, especially Brazil and Angola, but I mean United States and so on. And I know it is possible. I do not want to praise myself, but the fact is I did my 2 cents help for the New York Times, the Times of London, CNN, and so on to speak about the problem of East Timor starting 1996, special, and then 1998, 99. I spoke directly, personally, with some journalists, and the fact is, as you will remember, there was a snowball afterwards, including the CNN one day went to my home to interview me in my personal home because of this, what I did. And I was wondering if this could be done now again. Let's try to influence, convince, sensibilize, convince the world media to speak about this. And I think it will be easier for Australia to accept that afterwards.
Got the question? I know, yes, very good, right here.
Hello. My name is Charlie Liebling. I'm with the U.S. Citizens for Western Sahara. Given that the Western Sahara was the other non-self-governing territory invaded in 1975, and given that Morocco continues to illegally occupy and loot the territory, and given the strong friendship between Timor-Leste and Western Sahara, do you have any advice to offer the Polisario Front and the Western Sahara, since they have many of the same problems that you have had through the years?
And the third questioner, very good, Ian Martin.
Ian Martin. Although I've had some involvement with the sovereignty of Timor-Leste, I don't think I've ever fully understood the complexities of the maritime boundaries. But there is one extremely simple issue at the core of it, which it seems to me it would be wise to emphasize in educating the public, and that is the withdrawal of Australia from the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice on maritime boundaries. I was a guest speaker at the United Nations Association of Australia's conference 2 years ago, and that withdrawal was roundly condemned in that conference, including by leading Australian lawyers. And it is a shocking fact that a government which supports in most ways, would say it supports an international rule-based system, took that decision. And even those who can't follow all the complexities of the issue can surely see that as a central issue, which if Australia were persuaded, I think by its own civil society, more likely than by a change of prime minister, to return to the jurisdiction of the International Court of Justice, would inevitably require the reopening of negotiations.
Thank you. Those are 3 questions. The first was about mobilizing world opinion. The second was about the Western Sahara and whether you have advice for the Polisario Front, and the last from Ian Martin about if Australia could be persuaded to return to the ICJ. So, Dr. Araújo?
I would say that the first and the last would be more recommendations, but to make some comments on the Western Sahara, I would probably ask Excellency Ramsorta or Foreign Minister to say a few words on this. But on the issue of having the public opinion talking more about this issue, I think it's a great idea. The Maritime Boundary Office has also a mandate to scoping out and finding out what would be the best way for us to do that, particularly in the wider sense of educating not only the community in Australia but the worldwide community about our plight, about the issues that are surrounding the maritime boundary in Timor-Leste, and also particularly about the facts that reflect intentional infliction of injustice to our case. For example, by withdrawing themselves from the ICG and so on, as Ian Martin was talking about, and we'll be more than happy to talk more details about that. But we really appreciate the ideas, the support of mobilizing the public opinion, educating the community, not only in Australia but in other parts of the world. Probably His Excellency Missioner Guzman wants to say a few things more, but if not, then Minister of Foreign Affairs, if you could say something about this.
We have 5 minutes, so Shoshana Guzmão and Elizabeth Exposto, if you would like to say other things, this is the moment. Otherwise, we can get another question.
Well, we are a good friend of the Sahrawis, no? Sahrawis. We learn from them also. Ian Martin is here. When it was a process to referendum in Western Sahara, because of the problems, it was like postponed. And Ian Martin will remember, I was in Salemba in the prison, and it was violence, militias, and backed by the Indonesian military. And Ian Martin came to me and asked me if we could postpone. I said, no, because of this Western Sahara case, postponed till now. I believe that different realities, same objectives, different realities. Now the approach is different, should be. And I believe that the United Nations must take a lead in this. We, as comrades, we will, in one or another way, we will help them. But if it was a good case, success in Timor-Leste, of course, for Western Sahara, there will be a different way, but we believe that it will be solved. Thank you, Ian Martin, for reminding us about the conference held here, and when Australia was a little bit embarrassed because of its position. But yes, it is the first move that we are doing. Tell everybody that we need also your help. We need also your opinion. We from the government, we will continue to go through the mechanism necessary to defend our interest, but also the public opinion, especially in the USA, is very, very important. Charles Shiner, you know well, you were part of this. Professor Noam Chomsky, we are all here. We are hoping that we can provide you more material. I told in the beginning my English is not good, but we would provide you with more material just to help us to raise awareness about, if we can say, injustice or unfairness or what I can say, bad faith, maybe, or everything bad that we can see in this issue. Yes, what I can say.
Well done. We have a particular obligation this week to end things on time because of all the back-to-back meetings. So with great hesitation, I've already interrupted the father of his country once, and I don't want to have to do it again, but we'll have to bring it to a close now. Please join me in thanking the panel for their